Good afternoon. I'm Kaleb Owens, career coach here with Madison City Schools, and this is episode 2 of Career Conversations. Today I have Thomas Vinton from Turner Construction here with us. He's going to give us a little bit of background about construction, opportunities in that career field, about his specific journey, and really just give some insight on what that career path looks like. So without further ado, Thomas, how are you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to be here. I'm glad you were able to make it. So just give everybody a background about kind of where you're from, how you got into construction, and just a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I grew up just right down the road from Decatur, Alabama. Ended up, was there until I went to Mississippi State University.
Okay.
And I didn't start out as doing a construction major when I went there. I started out in communications. And so my first year I was doing communications, wanting to do something related to sports.
Okay.
And then as I kind of started getting into that, a lot of my summer jobs were more related to construction.
Absolutely.
And so after that first year, I kind of knew kind of an idea of what I wanted to do. And then the more I kind of started kind of looking into potentially switching majors, just kind of in those intro classes, I found the construction major. And then I'd had a couple jobs growing up. I did one where we hung sheetrock in a dentist's office. And then I had 2 summers back to back where we were basically painting a manufacturing plant, doing a bunch of concrete repairs around the plant.
Oh, wow.
So when I was looking to change majors, that was something that I always really enjoyed, was kind of starting a project, seeing it all the way through, finishing it, handing it over to a client. So that was when I swapped majors, that was something that instantly jumped off the page when I looked at Mississippi State building construction science.
Right.
So that was one that it was teasing a lot of those things that I had done in the past on a little bit different of a level. So kind of getting to do that same career path and just kind of on a more advanced level was kind of how I got introduced into the construction field.
Okay, so you got to college and you changed your major, but let's back up to high school. What are some things, I know you mentioned you did some stuff during the summertime, but maybe specifically in high school, was there anything, because I know maybe you didn't think about construction right off the bat, but were there any other things that kind of were similar to that you were involved in?
So I did a couple, a lot of my high school that I went to offered some different opportunities to kind of, like Habitat for Humanity was involved with our high school. And then we also had, there was a project called Metamorphosis where we went around building wheelchair ramps in Decatur. So through our school, I was able to go and kind of work with my hands a little bit with people in my class. Some of those were group projects, so you're kind of getting that team atmosphere, which is kind of like practice for the real world, but we went out and did those projects. So were other projects that kind of got me involved and kind of just started piquing that interest of, hey, this is pretty cool. We're planning out the work, we're doing a project, and then we're going out in the field, putting it together, handing it over, and kind of getting to see that client reaction to what we built for them.
Now, did you have like a formal internship or anything like through college, or was it kind of you worked on stuff kind of on your own and you were doing your schoolwork?
So I interned 3 different summers. So I had one where I worked for a roofing company in West Point, Mississippi. Went and worked for them on a sheet metal crew, and that was kind of a good experience of something that maybe something I didn't really want to do, but it was good hands-on experience.
Yeah.
And then I had another summer where I worked for a fight building company here in Huntsville doing concrete form work. And so I was kind of a carpenter apprentice for a summer, getting to build a elevator shaft in downtown Huntsville, part of the hospital.
That's cool.
And then the next summer was when I got my first kind of in the office type internship with Turner Construction, and they let me intern with them for 8 months. So those were all extremely valuable and kind of gaining that real world experience.
So we'll get back to your Turner internship and how that helped you for your current job, right? But I want to go back to something that you said. Some of the internships that you were a part of, some of that stuff wasn't necessarily what you wanted to do. And so I kind of want students to remember that checking stuff off the list of, hey, what am I going to do with my life is also important, just as important as like adding something to it. Because if you know things that you don't want to do, to me, I feel like that's getting you a step closer to what you do want to do. So I think that was good for you that you did some stuff that was like, I don't know if this is it, but I do know that it's something else, not necessarily this. So I think that offers some good perspective for you.
Yep. And I did have one, you mentioned doing other things, just because you're taking on an internship or a job, that might not be the career path that you want to go down. But I had one, I interned at I worked at a fast food restaurant for 3 months. And that was one, you pick up so many different skills, even though that's not what you want to do for your whole career. There's so much stuff that you can learn and take away from that you can apply to whatever you're going to be doing for your whole career. So even though at the time it was not something I really appreciated, looking back, customer service and kind of getting to interact with a lot of people, that's something it increases those soft skills.
Right. Where'd you work?
Chick-fil-A.
Wow, I worked at Chick-fil-A in high school.
Yep.
It's crazy. And again, I think that anything that you do, and I tell this to students, you can always learn from it. So even if it was the worst job ever, you can still gather something from it, or if you loved it. So same thing for me, even though our careers are very different right now, I think that what we learned there, just from providing customer service, for making sure that you get people what they need, just paying attention to detail, that stuff goes a long way. And you can see it with their company because they do a really good job, and I think that part's very important. The customer service aspect. Anyway, so the third internship that you did at Turner, maybe talk to us about how that was very instrumental in like where you ended up working with them, and kind of how that networking opportunity happened for you.
Yeah, so that one, the Mississippi State Building Construction Program had an opening. They were contacted by Turner saying, hey, we've got a spot. And this was the spring of 2014, so I was able to apply for that. Was given that internship, and then kind of getting on board, it kind of opened my eyes up to, the kind of culture and everything that you want to be a part of when you work full time and you go into a career. And so, a big part of that one was, you have to showcase a lot of those skills that you've picked up over the years. So communication, being kind of detail oriented. Really just being able to work in a team and communicate with other people, and other people are relying on you and you're relying on others. Right. So a lot of that, it kind of shows you before you go back to school what kind of soft skills you need to work on. And
absolutely.
And one of mine was just, the communication back and forth and being able to work with that team and understanding what you're going to need to get to them and what they're going to need to get to you. So this just from even if all you got out of it was just enhancing your soft skills and right. communication and teamwork, and a huge part of it that I really appreciated during that internship was having a sense of humor. A lot of times stuff doesn't go the way you plan for it to.
Absolutely.
So that being something that I'd like to think that most of the time I'll be pretty flexible and let stuff kind of bounce off and just kind of go with it. But that was an important one. You kind of got to see with the people I was working with. Stuff never goes the way that you planned. So being able to kind of have a backup and kind of rally as a team and figure out, hey, this happened, wasn't really what we wanted. Mm-hmm. How are we going to come together as a team and kind of make it work and still be successful?
Right. Soft skills is one of my favorite topics, so I'm kind of glad that you went there because, those are the things that students need to be aware of, but also, adults and professionals we work with, because the technical skills, the hard skills, hey, can I do math? Do I have my degree in, construction science or building science? But the soft skills are going to help you keep that job that the hard skills help you get. So maybe talk a little bit more about, you mentioned like flexibility and you mentioned communication. What are some other things that you've seen have really helped you, like as a professional in the construction industry? And what are some things that you've seen other people not do so well that you could kind of see like, hey, I could see that's maybe where they fell short as far as soft skills go?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one, and I never would have thought this when I first got into the industry, but just being able to communicate back and forth with people. You're going to run into people of all different walks of life, so being able to just communicate back and forth and be able to express ideas of stuff that you want to make happen and understand what they need from your side that you can help them do better at. So that just being able to effectively communicate, email is a huge part of that.
Yeah.
That's a large part of the game. That's how we communicate a lot of things back and forth. Mm-hmm. Being able to just pick up the phone and make phone conversations and just face to face, those are huge communication tools that we utilize daily. And then, kind of the teamwork is a huge one. On every project, you're basically with a new group, so being able to adapt to that new team
right.
and kind of understanding the personality types around you and figuring out, hey, this is the best way that this guy communicates this way. So kind of being able to have a little bit of a read on how your team clicks and how they work is kind of key in being successful, because you're with a different group and it just kind of cycles through and you go through different teams. So the communication, and then the one I hit on it a little bit earlier, but just the flexibility.
Absolutely.
And being able to have a sense of humor. You mentioned people that a skill that some people could work on, that's one where it's kind of like, hey, pretty much every day you're going to get disappointed in something that's going to happen because it didn't go the way you wanted. So being able to kind of bounce back and say, hey, that got messed up. What are we going to do to fix it?
So why don't you just tell us briefly, what's one of the coolest things that you've been able to work on or be a part of or see or complete as your job at Turner, in your job at Turner?
So probably one of the more, I guess I'll call it the most rewarding one, during one of my first internships, I was able to put the roof on the Mississippi State football practice facility.
That's cool.
So that's pretty cool. Every time I go in, I've got a 3-year-old now, so when I pull up on campus with him and my wife, that's one of the first attractions that I point out. It's like, yeah, I put that metal roof on that building.
Daddy put that roof up, just know that.
So it's one that hopefully 20 years from now, that when I'm pulling up on campus, that building is still there, and that's kind of just a cool accomplishment, just to be able to say, I physically put that in place, and it's just something you're kind of changing the landscape.
Right.
So it's kind of one that you can kind of take pride in of, I put that in with my hands. I went out there and did it. So from a rewarding standpoint, anytime you can do something, then 20 years from now, it's still sitting there. You got that rewarding feeling. Then you remember a lot of the memories from putting it together and the process.
Well, I think that's important because I think in everybody's job, there has to be an aspect of fulfillment and what is rewarding to you. So it's cool that for you, seeing that the roof on the practice field is kind of like, that was one of your things. And for me, it's kind of like being able to do things like this that can maybe give some students insight into what they're going to do later, or to have a conversation with somebody like you that want to talk to students about it. To me, that's a rewarding part of my job. So I think in everybody's career, they should also be looking, even in high school, for things that are kind of fulfilling to them now, but being able to look into the future to say, I like working with my hands. What could that look like down the road? Maybe putting a roof on a football practice field or building a school. I don't know. So I think that part's really important.
You might be mentoring my next boss.
Hey, maybe, But lastly, what would you could talk to the high school, Thomas, and to the high school kids now, the knowledge that you have now as a professional in construction, what's something that you would maybe do a little differently, or what's some advice that you have for high school students now as they're kind of going into their career journey?
If I could go back and kind of do everything over again, I think from probably the 10th grade on, I was always really big into baseball and cross country, so really big into sports, and I think those experiences are invaluable. Kind of working with teams, that's kind of like on the job training for how to work with other people. But I think kind of in between that, I would have spent a little bit more time kind of researching, different degrees. I said I started out in communication, so obviously you can jump right into your major that you're going to do. I think that's a big one, is kind of doing a little bit of research. But probably the one that if I could go back and tell 10th grade Thomas something that he could do that it applies that would help him out would be, reach out to different people. That if you think they have an interesting job, reach out to them. A lot of people are going to take the opportunity to mentor you. And if you say, hey, can I shadow you for 3 hours at your job this weekend or maybe Friday, a lot of people will they might not be able to do it right when you ask, but a lot of people are going to take the time to kind of show you around. So I think that experience, taking the students out to Toyota Field, for some that a light bulb might have gone off of, hey, this is something awesome that I think I want to do. So, and then some of it, even if you're on borderline, reach out to somebody that that does it, and see if they can give you a tour and kind of a look in the life of what they do every day.
Right.
Because, a lot of things you don't really know that you like it until you're kind of out in the middle of it, seeing what's going on. I didn't really know that construction was something that I really wanted to do until I was in those summer jobs, and it was kind of rewarding and kind of getting to do something that's going to be there years from now later. So I think that's the one, just, don't be afraid to reach out to people that are doing different career paths and kind of go shadow them and pick their brain on what they like, what they don't like.
Right. And one thing that I will say is I think it's really cool how in your field, especially with COVID happening and we're still in a pandemic, with everybody in your field being essential workers, I think that's something that's important for, people to think about as they're choosing a career, because if you're working like, healthcare or education or maybe for the government, those are things that, the jobs work a certain way, and, there's pros and cons to every job. So I think that, you probably never stopped, working and had some things to manage and things of that nature. So I think that's one perk about construction as well.
Yep. So life has gone on like normal. We've got more requirements on site than what we normally do with all the masking and everything, but ever since like mid-April, we've kind of just been business as usual.
Absolutely. Got to be flexible.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Well, we're very thankful that Thomas could join us today. And everyone, we're very glad that you could tune in to Career Conversations, and we will see you next time. Have a good day.